Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. This is extremely important, but I must warn you, it's very disturbing information. So I'd like to begin this one with Luke 17:2. It would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were thrown into the sea, than that he should offend one of these little ones. So again, friends, before we begin, the reason I'm doing this video is because the world must know. But fair warning, once you know, you can't unknow. As I read this article in its entirety, something I rarely ever do on a video of my own, I want you to recall the Instagram post from Jimmy Comet in which he, Alephantis, wrote #murder. And working on my night cheese, whose specialty is building child-sized coffins, wrote #killroom, while another wrote just a pile of money under a sheet, and still another wrote, just rinse it off when you're done. What are these people talking about? What are they referring to? The mainstream media would have you believe this is normal banter. I also want you to recall the films Hostel and Hostel 2, which I've previously stated are not acts of fiction, but rather fictional documentaries. These things are most foul, and they do happen, and they are happening in the world right now. You'll recall these disturbing murals in Brussels that popped up on buildings in 2017, this one which recalls specifically a scene from one of those Hostel movies. And one last thing before I begin reading this article. Recall the mainstream media's stance on these types of horrors, running cover for them and claiming endlessly that things like this don't happen and that anyone who claims they do is delusional. These mainstream media institutions literally run cover for child sex traffickers and proprietors of satanic ritual abuse and murder.
This is how conspiracy theories are threaded together, lie by lie.
There is very real blood on their hands. Here's the article from bizpackreview.com. Italian teens arrested for paying with Bitcoin to see children tortured and murdered on the dark web. Written by Vivek Saxena, July 19, 2020. Two 17-year-old Italian teens, a boy and a girl, were reportedly arrested last week after using Bitcoin to purchase access to a dark web live stream of children being sexually abused, tortured, and murdered. The two were arrested as part of an operation known as Deliro, which is the Italian word for delirium, that began last October according to a report published Wednesday in the Italian-language newspaper Il Messaggero. In their texts to each other, authorities said the boy told his friend about the Red Rooms live streams, where videos of executions, murders, dismemberments, sexual acts on animals, organ removals, castrations, and child pornography against very young children could all be viewed. Images reportedly shared between the two, seized by law enforcement, include pornographic videos, self-made by children, videos adults made of minors sexually assaulting children between the ages of 2 and 4, and gory videos involving Nazi symbology. Operation Delirio has thus far led to the arrests of 25 people, 19 of whom were under the age of 18. Sadly, the dark web live stream where these Red Rooms are hosted still remain online. It's believed the live streams are likely carried out in Southeast Asia. It's further known that most of the live streams end with the child being killed. The people who operate the streams reportedly charge exorbitant sums of money to let viewers dictate what happens next to the child. Investigative activities, which continued after the execution of dozens of searches last autumn, brought to the surface, the investigators explain, the darkest and most dramatic part of the circumstantial findings. That relating to the deep web and encrypted internet context where images of heinous violence circulate, even in live situations in which users who have managed to access these hidden environments are allowed to interact in conducts of sexual violence and torture on minors carried out directly by adults. Live requests have very significant costs and ensure very high profits for foreign organizations that carry out such inhumane acts. News of this operation comes only days after 6 men who'd planned on using makeshift prisons and torture chambers to torture and potentially kill a number of victims were arrested. Check this out, friends. Dutch police arrested 6 men on kidnapping and serious assault charges. Police say they found makeshift torture chambers containing a dentist's chair, handcuffs, cutters, scalpels, and pliers, and police say they were likely intended to torture victims.
Get outside. Take it.
And again, friends, I want you to recall that Instagram post from Jimmy Comet, James Alefantis, #killroom. Dutch police arrested 6 men after discovering sea containers that had been converted into a makeshift prison and soundproofed torture chamber, complete with a dentist's chair, tools including pliers and scalpels and handcuffs, a high-ranking officer announced Tuesday, Time magazine reported on July 7th. Authorities said police conducted the raid before the torture chamber could be used and alerted potential victims who went into hiding. The grisly discovery was made last month by officers investigating leads generated by data from encrypted phones used by criminals that were cracked recently by French police. Detectives in Britain and the Netherlands have already arrested hundreds of suspects based on the encrypted messages. And listen to this line, friends. Apparently torturing people is popular among European deviants. Friends, this has been going on for centuries, and those of us who have called attention to it and shined the light of truth on it get demeaned and disparaged and even libeled and slandered by the mainstream mockingbird horror media. What's not clear is whether the activities in Britain and the Netherlands were also linked to the dark web. What's known is that reports about dark web torture rooms have been circulating for years now. Yet according to the habitually wrong, left-wing American mainstream media, such reports are all figments of people's imagination. In 2015, Vice magazine claimed, live streaming torture is the dark web's favorite hoax. And here's that article. This weekend, hoaxers said they would live stream the torture and murder of 7 ISIS terrorists. That same year, the Washington Post described red rooms as one of the most stubborn myths. As evidence, the paper cited the claims of an Australian journalist, Eileen Ormsby. The answer, she writes, is pretty simple. The dark stuff does not and never has existed. The exception is child porn, but that's generally not what deeper web people are looking for. Now keep in mind, this is the Washington Post and Vice. There's a multitude of evidence to back Ormsby's claim, chief among it the fact that there is never actually first-hand evidence of red rooms, hitmen, and their ilk, and that such operations have never been busted in the FBI's increasingly frequent dark web raids, the Post claimed. Yet 4 years later, the evidence seems fairly clear-cut. This tweet from the National Crime Agency in the UK, HurtCore, refers to hidden dark web forums dedicated to the discussion and image and video sharing of rape, murder, sadism, torture, pedophilia, blackmail, humiliation, and degradation. Dated December 27, 2017. And this tweet from the Australian Federal Police, the AFP, we are seeing rape and torture of our children for sexual gratification. They use the dark web like a weapon. They use encryption like a sword and anonymity like a shield. AFP Commissioner Reese Kershaw on encryption and online child exploitation. Dated February 18, 2020. And this article from bizpackreview.com concludes, or does the Washington Post think the evidence is a hoax too, just like everything else? Save, of course, for the Russian collusion delusion hoax. Friends, again, the title of this article is Italian Teens Arrested for Paying with Bitcoin to See Children Tortured and Murdered on the Dark Web. Blood and gore. Brussels asks how far street art can go. January 27, 2017. They flaunt it in our faces, friends, just like those 2 pages from the Pinocchio story that I read in my last video. They traffic in children. They sell children. They sacrifice children, just like what was depicted in the movies Hostel and Hostel 2. But if anyone causes one of these little ones who believe in me to stumble, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. And I'll conclude this video, friends, with just 2 phrases from Q. Number 1, sunlight kills. And number 2, you have more than you know. Share this information far and wide, friends. Pizzagate and Pedogate are very, very real. Jimmy Savile was just the tip of the iceberg, and so was Comet Ping Pong. And for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda and mockingbird mainstream media lies. God bless. Bye-bye. The coachman told Honest John his scheme. He brought boys to a place called Pleasure Island. He said, "No boys ever return, at least not as boys."